YouTube, and welcome back to the ranch. I know it's been a while since my last update, but updating is just a hobby. I'm a tortoise and reptile keeper. I spend most of my time trying to make the lives of my pets better. As you can see, I've expanded a lot. Yes, as you can see, I've done a lot of expanding. I've expanded all of the tortoise enclosures up by the house. I've significantly expanded the desert tortoise enclosure, currently in that cement house brewmating, but when they wake up, they're going to have one heck of a surprise when they see how much more space they have. Over here are the future enclosures for the leopard tortoises. I currently only have Pardalis babcocki, but I do plan to get Pardalis pardalis, which is why you see the start of two separate enclosures. And, just for fun, I've even made myself a dirt runway for my RC aircraft. Back here at the barn, you can see that I've expanded the radiated tortoise enclosure to just over 30 feet by 12 feet, and I've expanded the Burmese Star Tortoise enclosure to 30 feet by 10 feet. The Galapagos tortoises now have an amazing 60 feet by 75 feet to wander over and graze at their leisure. Everybody's gotten a bit more space. Making videos is just a hobby. Taking care of my reptiles is my main focus. As you may have guessed, in this return video, the subject is the Burmese Star Tortoise, not the puppy. Not the puppy. No, you're not the subject. Throughout this video, I'll compare and contrast a lot between the Indian Star Tortoise and the Burmese Star Tortoise. Since the Indian Star Tortoise is far more common, so more people have that as a positive frame of reference. And then also talk about their natural history and a little bit about their care and how I take care of them. Throughout this video, you'll see Mara, the largest of my Burmese stars, Mayo, a subadult male, and Minnie, a yearling Burmese star. As I mentioned, even though this video is about Burmese stars, I will make many references and comparisons to Indian stars as more people have experience with them. Outwardly, they look very much like the only other species remaining in the Geochelone genus, the Indian Star Tortoises. In fact, up until somewhat recently, they were simply considered a subspecies of the Indian star, whereas modern taxidermy techniques, there is enough genetic variation to bestow both of them with full species status. They do occur somewhat close to one another. Modern-day Burma, known as Myanmar, and India are almost next-door neighbors. If you were to pretend that these tortoises were native to the United States, you would see that if we said the Burmese stars came from Philadelphia, then the Indian stars would be native to lower Louisiana, South Texas, that border area. A quick look at Mara, the Burmese star, and Andromeda, the Indian star, shows you some of the more obvious differences. You can see that Burmese stars have far fewer lines radiating from the center of each scoot. Typically, there are only 6 lines on each of the dorsal scoots of Burmese stars, and not many more on their coastal scoots. You will rarely, if ever, see any yellow radiations going directly front to back as seen in Indian stars. And neither tortoise species has a neutral scoot. When we look at their plastrons, the differences are even more pronounced. The intricate radiating pattern seen in an Indian star is replaced by a more simplistic diamond patterning as seen here. The skin on the head, neck, and limbs of Burmese star tortoises is also a bit simpler, mostly yellow with some black splotching here and there, compared to the almost leopard print that we see on Indian star extremities. The trio that I care for show drastic differences in growth rate. Mara has been on more than a year-long growth explosion, while Minnie is growing at a far slower rate. Mayo seems to have shorter bursts, then evens out. They all eat the same foods and receive very similar care otherwise. This is just an example of individual variability. Mara is one large meal shy of 3 kilograms, a bit more than 6.5 pounds. 3 kilos is generally considered the minimum breeding weight, while 5 kilos is generally considered the upper range of their weight. Mayo, being a little over a third of Mara's mass, is also on the cusp of breeding size. While they are not yet completely mature, that doesn't stop them from acting like it. Just a couple of teenage tortoises dancing as if nobody was watching. At her current size, Mara would be considered a healthy-sized mature adult male at 10 inches, or 25 centimeters, though males can grow to near the same size as females. For her part as a female, she's got a few more inches of growing potential. Most sources list the adult size for a female Burmese star at 12 to 15 inches, or 30 to 37 centimeters. While a fair number of larger individuals exist, Indian stars' adult sizes on average are around 5 inches for males and 8 inches for females. The Sri Lankan variation of Indian stars top out in the 12-inch range for females, similar to female Burmese stars, with male Sri Lankan stars only achieving an average of 7.5 inches. And remember, these sizes are average. Even in my collection, Andromeda exceeds the average size for her species by over an inch. On tortoiseforum.org, a fellow from Sri Lanka posted photos of a huge male that was found by a research group, just shy of 16 inches, 40 centimeters, and a tad over 30 pounds, which is roughly 14 kilos. Now, let's get back to where they come from. As with the python from the region and a breed of house cat, this tortoise is named after its location. The country of Burma is known as Myanmar, just as its neighbor, formerly Siam, is known today as Thailand. Geography lesson aside, within their historic native range that I've shaded in white on this topographic map, they inhabit a variety of habitats. Montane tropical forests, lowland arid grasslands, and pretty much everything in between. Their gorgeous and contrasting patterns make them a target for the black market pet trade, while their respectable adult size doom them to the Asian food markets. More recently, the very few remaining wild tortoises are found only in those 3 red dots. Now that I've told you about their sad, nearly doomed natural history, let me tell you a little bit about these guys as far as conservation efforts go. About 15 years ago, this species was considered functionally extinct, which means there are not enough individuals to find one another in the wild to repopulate their species. Just 10 years ago, in the list of most endangered turtles and tortoises in the world, they were number 6 overall, but the number 1 among tortoises. The plowshare tortoise now holds that distinction amongst endangered tortoises. Recognizing the peril of the species, the Turtle Survival Alliance and partners began a breeding program held at wildlife sanctuaries in the tortoise's native country. Starting in 2004 with only 175 adult individuals, 3 assurance colonies were established. Trained dogs were used for a few weeks in the initial attempt to find adults. Only a few were found this way. Most of the founder individuals were poaching and trafficking confiscations. A decade was spent trying to expand the species' numbers. By 2014, they released the first group back into the wild and have released nearly 3,000 since that first group. According to a recent post on Instagram by the Turtle Survival Alliance, the breeding group now numbers over 16,000. And last year, in 2018, wild hatchlings were found from the very first releases 6 years ago. I've had success keeping Minnie here using the same format as most every other baby tortoise. Temperatures are maintained in the 80s, humidity is similar. I soak all hatchlings almost daily with food being offered as often or more so. And as they progress out of the delicate hatchling stage and mature, temperature fluctuations into the 90s and down into the 60s will not harm them, especially if they have shade or direct sunlight, respectively. When it comes to food, if it's green, it's on their menu. Grasses, weeds, clovers, prickly pear, cactus pads, lettuces, and other commercial greens. Spring mix makes a particularly diverse meal for them. In fact, here we have Minnie doing her best baby sea turtle impression as she charges today's veggie meal. Sure, some plants like spinach may be high in phosphorus relative to calcium, others may have dreaded oxalates, but it turns out the actual clinical research tells a completely different story than the readily accepted view on those oxalates. And as I've mentioned in many social media posts and in other videos, a varied diet with supplement ensures the tortoises get all the nutrients they need and compensates for some of the bad secondary compounds found in plants. Unlike my Indian stars and some other species, these guys don't seem to have any interest in animal protein. But living outside, should that desire strike them, there are plenty of bugs and worms around for them to munch on. As for behavior, a lot of people say these guys are more robust and personable than Indian stars. I have not noticed a species-specific difference among the half-dozen stars that I keep. In fact, if I were to paint Nova and Minnie shells to hide their identity, I wouldn't know they were a different species. Having spent a lot of time with both of them from the time they were hatchlings, they are both pretty responsive and interactive with humans. But every tortoise is different, and every keeper has different experiences. Something I have noticed is that since being outside in the barn and paddock, Mayo and Mara have definitely become more interactive. In their indoor enclosure, there's some knowledge of me as a being from the chest up, as that's all they could really see. Being able to get into their habitats with them, they can now get a sense of what a human is and are very quick to saunter over and nose boot me and eat anything I have to offer them. Being able to interact with them at their level has clearly had a positive impact on their comfort levels. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you would like to learn more about this species, let me recommend the Star Tortoise book written by Jerry Fife. There are also a few really good online sources of information, like the forum board tortoiseforum.org. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and if you found value in this episode, share it with your animal-loving friends. Thanks for watching.